Okay, we are returning to contemplation of the transportation element. Proceed, please.
We're contemplation transportation?
Okay, went back and looked up the traffic concurrency exception areas,
Yeah,
are all the CRAs, and they were adopted in 2021.
okay.
And there is no map. We never had a map. It was just, apparently, people would just show the CRA map.
And how do we designate transportation concurrency exception areas? Are there volumes, or we just say, okay, we're going to make these failed roads, or how is that accomplished?
I think, do you know that?
Hi, I'm Lisa Wixer. I'm the Chief Project Engineer for Public Works Department.
Yes, you are.
And I did most of the modifications to this chapter were done by me, so I offered to come and answer some of your questions.
Thank
So
you.
TCEAs were established back in 2021, as Michael said, basically to address what Don mentioned earlier. We recognized that we had some roads that had the potential to fail the level of service within the CRAs, that we just had invested a lot of money. Dixie Highway in Port Salerno was one. We also looked at the potential for Dixie Highway if and when in Jensen Beach and Rio. And Map Road, those were all done intentionally. Bridge Road was another one. So we established the TCEAs and used the CRA boundary because it made logical sense to have the CRA boundary be the boundary of the transportation concurrency exception area. The board had to agree to that, which they did in 2021, and there were two amendments made to the comp plan, one in the transportation element, and then one in Chapter 18, which is the community redevelopment area element.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And then back on the level of service, the level of service was actually in two areas in there. So it's actually in 5.2, 3. It was where it was the qualifying things, and now it was added up in that area. So, I mean, it wasn't added. It was changed when it was changed from the level of service to the qualitative level of service. That piece down there was a duplicate, so it got taken out as it's, because it actually is up in 5.2.
Where's 5.2? I see 5.3. I see,
It's in the roadway portion for existing roadway.
The existing,
And in the existing roadway, it describes the existing level of service that's been adopted as level of service D for the most part. And then I found it was also in the future description of the future network, which was redundant. So I removed the redundancy from the future and left it in existing because it is an existing adopted level of service. And it was then updated to correspond to the new context classification.
I'm still not seeing it. I'm looking at the language that's, some of it's old, some of it's new. On page 455, which starts out at the most current qualitative level of service on all major roadways, is that it that's replacing?
So 4.23, which is up on the screen, this qualitative level of service targets, and the table that you were referencing earlier,
Yeah.
that's the new section that was moved from 5.4
4.
B.
it's on page 454.
So now it's all in one spot, as opposed to being in two separate spots.
All right, let me flip around in my paper copy here to see if I,
So it would be on page 4 of 34 of the chapter 5.
that's not corresponding with mine.
It's the table that you asked why the descriptions were abbreviated.
So all of the things that were under 5.4B, which is analysis and LOS standards, you believe are now fully duplicated in 5.3 in 2 paragraphs at the top of page 454.
Yes, and in what was in 5.4, or 5.5A previously, I'm sorry, 5.4B, analysis and level of service standards, is now traffic forecasting and analysis because it talks about how we predict what our needs are going to be in the future. And the existing 5.2 talks about the roadway capacity and the adopted level of service standards. So what was under 5.4B, the roadway capacity and adopted level of service standards, those two were moved to 5.2, and the traffic analysis techniques was left in 5.5A. So just separating what's existing from what's future is the intent.
Except that 5.2 largely is unaffected. And yet you say that 5.4 has been incorporated.
So it was,
Except
in my opinion, it was redundant before, so I removed the redundancy from the 2 sections.
All right, I'm going to have to read this more thoroughly. And also on page, it's the last policy in the chapter, which is policy 5.12A3, maintain the channel in Manatee Pocket. The county shall maintain the channel in the Manatee Pocket to enable deeper draft vessels to access local marinas and service facilities. I don't think it's necessary to include to enable deeper draft vessels to access local marinas and service facilities. I think it's absolutely, the county shall maintain the channel in the Manatee Pocket. I think that's specific enough. Stop.
If that's the will of the board, I'm
Sure, I agree.
Not a problem. See, look at that, 3 for 3.
Any further questions or comments?
You want to pass the gavel to make a motion?
I don't think I need to, do I?
So we want to, well, we need public.
We need
comment,
public
right?
comment.
Is there any public comment on the transportation element? Wise move.
So we need to continue.
I will move that we continue the item to the March 25th board meeting
And include the changes that were suggested for the Manatee Pocket.
and include the changes that we have discussed.
Is there a second?
Yes.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. On to the next item, which is public hearing number 4, which is a legislative public hearing to consider amending the Comp Plan Amendment 24-03 intergovernmental coordination element. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I have them in hand.
Again, for the record, my name is Clyde Doolin, the Comprehensive Planning Administrator. With me is Stephanie Height from the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. And this is Chapter 3, Intergovernmental Coordination. There are not a lot of changes going on here. Again, we're recognizing things like the Village of Indiantown and making some minor changes. And so I will turn it over to Stephanie if there's anything you wish to cover on the highlights.
Sure. For the record, Stephanie Height, Deputy Executive Director of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. As Clyde said, there's very few changes in this one. Names of some agencies have changed, referencing the Village of Indiantown, just making some of the language consistent with current legislation, and then language to coordinate school site planning with the Martin County School District. There was one policy where we had noted that there was an interlocal agreement between the county and the town of Jupiter Island. I believe Chair Hurd had brought that up last time, that was something to get on again. I do believe that you're in the process of updating that interlocal agreement. So I think when it comes back in the March 25th, by that time, we'll know whether or not to keep that language in or remove that language.
Will we? I know that we have an agreement that's being negotiated.
We have it scheduled for the March 11
Yeah.
BCC meeting, so if the board adopts that interlocal agreement at that point, then on March 25, we'll be able to bring you revised language here at this, instead of this sentence shown.
Okay,
Jupiter Island's already approved it.
that's what I thought. I thought it was imminent.
Yeah.
Good, that will be good to get in the comp plan.
Also, on March 11, we'll be presenting to you Chapter 11 of the comprehensive plan, and it has a couple of figures in it that reflect that old interlocal agreement, so we'll probably be discussing with you changes to those figures as well.
Okay, good.
Unless you have anything else, I think that concludes staff presentation.
I have a question. It's on page 620. Conservation element, the Land Acquisition Selection Committee is responsible for evaluating and prioritizing parcels identified for acquisition by the county and will be used as needed. The committee is composed of representatives of business and environmental organizations and the BCC. I don't think it's composed of the BCC.
I don't think so either.
So we'll revise language.
Was it land conservation?
Conservation element.
Yeah. The Land Selection Committee, Land Acquisition Selection Committee.
It also has agricultural folks in it,
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
so that needs.
So just make it be reflective of the
Of the
fact.
current one as opposed to the prior, yes.
Yeah, I can work with you, Clyde, we'll update it for the current Environmental Land Committee. I don't think that committee exists anymore.
I have it on this beautiful system. I have it on Audible. I listen to
You
it
read
while
the
I'm
underlined stuff, didn't you?
sleeping. I read it when I'm sleeping. I listen to it.
Is there any public comments?
Thank you.
Any commissioner comments?
I agree with you.
Is there a motion?
Motion to continue to March 25.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And with the amendment to the language.
Yes. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. On to public hearing number 5, which is a legislative public hearing to consider adoption of an ear amendment on Amendment 24-06 housing element.
Thank you, members of the board. Stephanie Height also worked on this one and assisted with staff with a lot of data analysis mining, and we're very appreciative of all the work that the TCRPC did in coming up with all this data and research. This has not changed from what was presented on October 22, 2024. Most of the changes here are really pretty much data analysis that's had to be replaced and updated. There are no policy changes of sort. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what
Do you
page?
want to reference that? I don't know what page it is in the agenda item. Policy 63C.
Okay. I'll go to 63C. Oh, no, I want to get to the,
63C is 793, if you can do pages.
thank you, Commissioner. Is this what you're? Yeah.
I think we had originally said that we were going to change this to the 23 years and then add a policy to reference back to Chapter 4. But then after discussion, we just made it consistent. We didn't changed the whole policy, we just changed the year planning period. So I
Yes.
think that goes back to the discussion earlier today about that we need to make all that consistent. So I think when you come back to discuss Chapter 4, this will be another policy that's going to need to reflect it and be consistent with the others.
Agreed.
Agreed.
But we're really just changing the 15 and 20 in this case.
Yes.
We had proposed more changes to 6.3C, and then we backed away from those changes and left it pretty much as is. But yes, we'll change the additional 15 and 20 consistently. We'll have to do that through all chapters.
Also on page 798, number 7 is a new policy, and it's, the county may provide an exception or waiver for an impact fee for the development or construction of housing that's affordable as defined in something. If the county provides such an exception or waiver, it's not required to use any revenues to offset the impact. Is this a new statute, a new state statute? Then why isn't it, what's S 42971?
That's a reference to Florida statutes.
So it's not FS something, something, something?
It is Florida statutes. Yes.
I was going to say, I think
Okay.
we consistently use the S, right?
We're gonna keep you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find where else. Yeah, I mean, we can add that in to say
Okay.
Florida statutes, FS.
Any more questions, comments for staff? Any public comments? Is there a motion to continue this item?
Does she have her hand up in the back? No, she did. No. You want to speak to this?
Okay.
Motion to accept, motion to continue this until March 25th with any changes that were discussed, like FS.
Yeah. There's a motion.
Second.
Second, you made the motion.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. On to public hearing number 6, which is a legislative public hearing to consider amending 24-07, the recreation element.
Joining me is Amy Offenbach, planner. She's going to hit the highlights of Chapter 7 for us.
Chapter 7 is the recreation element of the comprehensive plan, and the proposed amendments are not related to any changes in the state statutes and are housekeeping in nature. Growth Management coordinated with the Parks and Recreation Department for these changes, and the main changes are for the removal of the Development of Regional Impact, or DRI, from the plan, which is no longer required by state statutes, and updating the Parks and Recreation Master Plan every 10 years. And if you can go to page 906.
906.
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at the rest of the changes for them. This is the strike and underline. If you have any questions for staff, we'll be happy to answer. But staff recommends approval of continuation for March 25th, 2025. And this concludes the presentation.
Commissioner Vargas.
Just a question here on page 867. It says the updates to the Park and Recreation Master Plan will be conducted every 10 years. Would that have to correspond with the same amount of years that we discussed earlier today? Or is this something separate? It is separate, okay.
And that was changed from 5. Is that because those are expensive?
I believe the Parks Department does feel that the extending from 5 to 10 gives them more time in order to fund and make the changes.
Build them.
Is there anything Kevin does that's not expensive?
No.
We try and rein them in,
He's a
though.
good money manager.
But he does good
You have
work
to
and
watch
he
the
makes
money.
money.
Yeah, that's right.
Ask Stephanie Murley. Is there any public comment? Commissioner comments? Is there a motion to continue this item?
Boy, it's a tough crowd. Yes, there
This
is.
is a tough.
Motion to continue this item until March 25th.
Second.
Any comments? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And we'll take up public hearing number 7, which is a legislative public hearing to consider adopting Comp Plan Amendment 24-16, Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation. Yes.
Okay, again, Stephanie Height, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. In this chapter, the changes again are mostly housekeeping in nature. We did want to update, there was a 2015 study done that was in there. It was updated in 2022, so those numbers are being updated to reflect the current information obtained from that study. Specific information from Martin County, there are 25 nonprofit arts and cultural organizations that participated in that study. It identifies 378 jobs in arts and culture, 14.4 million income to residents, and 4.2 million in tax revenue to the county. We did some updating to some existing conditions. The number of historic properties went up, so we listed those, and then we added some new organizations. Also, there's a policy being revised to reflect the renaming of the Public Art Site Committee to the Public Art Advisory Committee, and terminating the Public Art Master Plan and 5-year plan, which was done by ordinance by the county in 2019. And then we're just relocating a policy to a different objective because it fits better where that is, and that, because it's related to information on local history. So, and I'd also like to just acknowledge Nancy Terrell at Martin Arts helped a lot with this information and getting these updates to this data. With that, yes, we recommend that you approve to continue this to March 25th, and that's the end of our presentation.
Any questions? Comments? I have one question. It's on page 1029, and it's policy 16.2A1, development of a cultural performing arts center. The county shall assist in developing a cultural and performing arts center and other facilities as they come to be needed, such as the efforts to renovate and repurpose the historic Stewart High School building. I'm a little sensitive to this, staying in our lane. You know, I really don't want to meddle in this. And I wouldn't want somebody wouldn't want somebody staking a claim on how we use our buildings.
Well, they're doing it. It's done. They're moving forward with that.
Good. I don't want to have a part in it. I don't want to.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
When you referenced Ms. Turrell, did she help you, and this was her language? This wasn't your idea to have the county help with the high school? I mean, the former,
I don't recall where it came from, but I think it was just as an example of something that was happening at the time. So, I mean, the way it reads in there, it is just being put in as just an example of something to do. I mean, we don't have to add that language in.
I agree with Commissioner Hurd. You're welcome.
Just end it at the needed.
We'll just leave the policy
Yeah.
as it is and not have the underlined.
I just don't want to substitute our authority for where it's not appropriate.
And most likely, by the time it happens again, that building will be done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll just, that suggested text that we have in there, we'll just not put that in.
Unless there was some.
Sentence add the word needed.
Yes.
Yeah, just end it there.
Can you just do me a favor and speak to her if there was some reason that, I know she's trying for a tremendous amount of grants to pay for this, if there was some grant language that was necessary that we show that we have an official, kind of, the county is interested in an official point of view. I would hate to strike language because we felt we should, and then she doesn't qualify for grants or something.
Sure.
And you could let us know by March 25th. Just gold.
Is there any public comments? Is there a motion to
Motion
continue?
to continue to March 25th.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And public hearing number 8 is a legislative public hearing to consider adopting Comp Plan Amendment 24-17, Public Schools Facility Element. And Ms. Height.
Yes, thank you. For this, it's a lot of just housekeeping things, updating some of the information in the data. In one of the sections, the school enrollment has been updated to include information related to decreased enrollment statistics in public schools between 2019 and 2023, and then increased enrollment in charter schools during the 2022-2023 school year. Also, fiscal considerations has been updated to the current information on the district's capital assets and long-term debt. We revised and added language related to school concurrency created by development. Included the Village of Indiantown into the annual review of the public school facilities element. And then also updated another one, policy to include that the Village of Indiantown and the Martin Metropolitan Planning Organization be involved in efforts to coordinate for sidewalks and bike paths to facilitate travel to and from schools and recreation facilities. Also, the maps in there were updated. There were 2 new schools since the last time that was updated that were added in the Treasure Coast Classical Academy and the Indiantown High School. And a lot of thanks goes to the school district for helping us and providing us the information we needed to update this element.
Yes, thank you to the school district.
Any questions or comments from the board? Would anyone from the public like to address us? Oh, Commissioner Capps, sorry.
Does our comp plan require public school concurrency now for new developments? Like, say a large development wants to go in. I remember years ago, that used to be like a thing where maybe certain people would say, you don't have the schools for that development, therefore the development cannot happen. Or has that kind of been done away with, kind of like the road concurrency thing, where you can no longer bring up an inadequate road as a reason for denying something?
The statutes no longer require school concurrency, but in your comp plan, you do have some, I'm not specific with it, but there are policies that are going to require development to provide those schools, to do a study and require what that capacity need would be.
Our interlocal agreement and this element require that the school district do an analysis, and we have actually on our LPA a member from the school district that participates, and they do review all of the residential site plans and comp plan amendments and provide us with some basic analysis of their school needs related to it. And we do factor that in as a part of plan amendments and as a part of site planning. However, there may be circumstances where if there's a shortfall, it is not unlike what you described with the road situation.
I think where I remember this is back in the day when Indiantown was going to do the big giant DRI. I think those arguments were brought up frequently, as I remember. Oh, you don't have the schools to do that. And
But actually, I mean, in the analysis that has been done on a number of the plan amendments and so on lately is in many of the schools, and whether it be the high school, there may be only a deficiency in one grade level or one middle school or elementary, and because of the decrease in population, as Stephanie said, there's not really an issue in many cases.
Commissioner, if I could add into that, one of the primary reasons for having the joint meeting with the school and the city and the county and now the village added to it was initially that group was created to discuss concurrency, school concurrency in capital projects. But since that time, we've also had charter schools develop significantly, and so you can see the county school system has a number of additional capacity drawn by the number of charter schools that have been developed. So this story is not, it's changed.
What grades does Treasure Coast Classical Academy have?
Almost
To
all.
12 now.
I think they're
Is it
like-
through 12?
Yeah.
Is there any public comment? Is there a motion to continue this item?
Move to continue to March 25th.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Chair, most
Thank
of
you.
the motions and seconds are coming from this side.
I
Can you
I
balance
noticed.
it out to the other side as well?
You're doing a great job down there.
Really want
Thank you,
Second.
members of the
to
board.
all the chance.
Second half of the meeting.
You're working hard down there.
A lot of
There
motions.
you go.
Yeah, these are good ones for you to entertain.
The people on the left don't want to be responsible for making those
No,
motions.
they're voting.
We're in learning mode.
Plus, let's turn this next one down no matter what it is.
We're just listening to the old pros.
Yeah, I'm old.
Yo, I feel,
You're not old. You're not even 50.
I'm 50.
Ooh, we
50, and then I get,
are taking up public hearing quasi judicial number 1, which is a request for rezoning approval to planned unit development through a PUD zoning agreement for the Chansey Bay Ranch project, including a master final site plan. Good afternoon. Oh, sorry. So this is quasi judicial. Any ex parte disclosures? Commissioner Vargas.
None, already been filed, my report.
Commissioner Capps.
If I have any, they have been filed.
I have them, and they have been filed.
I have been filed.
I do, and they've been filed.
And have you turned in all of your work stuff and handed it to the clerk?
Copy of my work history and this agenda item is turned in as Exhibit 1.
And anyone who's going to be offering testimony, please stand up, raise your right hand. Sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. For the record, Brian Neelam, Principal Planner with the Growth Management Department. This is a request by WGI Incorporated on behalf of CBR Investors, LLC, for approval of a planned unit development zoning agreement for the Chansey Bay Ranch project, including a master final site plan for a 9-lot single-family subdivision and associated infrastructure with a resulting density of 0.49 units per acre. Included with this application is a request for a certificate of public facilities reservation. I'd like to, for the purposes of clarity, just bring up this map. Since the property is over a mile long, it gives you a little bit better view of where it's at. So the approximate 18.2 acre site is generally located on the west side of Southwest Connors Highway, approximately 6 miles north of Southwest Canner Highway and south of 10150 Southwest Connors Highway, which is the property to the north. This undeveloped land borders a canal on its west side and Southwest Connors Highway on its east side. There's a single-family home to the north of the property, and due south is cropland. The property is outside the Urban Services District and will use well and septic.
That's it.
Oops,
That's it. That's a short.
sorry. The existing zoning district on the property is RE2A, Rural Estate Density District, with a rural density underlying future land use. Single-family detached dwellings are a permitted use in the RE2A zoning district. Pursuant to Policy 4.13A.5, parentheses 1, of the Martin County Comprehensive Growth Management Plan, lands with rural density shall be developed at a density of no more than 1 dwelling per 2 gross acres. All rural development shall have a maximum building height of 40 feet and maintain at least 50% of the gross land area as open space. This proposal complies with these requirements. The following tables show the structure setbacks and development standards of the existing RE2A, Rural Estate Density Zoning District. The bottom row in red shows the setbacks and development of the proposed planned unit development zoning agreement. So you can see that the existing zoning here is setbacks are 30 feet for all stories, front, rear, and side. And the proposed setbacks for the PUD exceeds or meets the requirements of straight zoning. Double for the side at minimum. It's meeting it for the rear, and it exceeds it by 2 feet at minimum for the front. Excuse me. Then also for the development standards, it meets the 2-acre minimum lot size, the minimum lot width. It meets the maximum residential density with 0.49. And the minimum open space for this proposal is 75%, and it's required to be 50%. The proposed PUD is asking for the maximum height to be 40 feet, which is allowed per the comp plan, but is not allowed in the straight zoning. The applicant is seeking rezoning approval to a planned unit development to allow the maximum building height of 40 feet permitted in the comp plan. As a condition of the PUD agreement, the owner will make a one-time public benefits contribution to the county in the amount of $6,000 for use by Martin County Fire Rescue to purchase one fire preemption device. This is sheet 1 of the final site plan. As I said, it's over a mile long, so it's a little bit over, I think it's 18.2 acres, so that has been split up or divided into 2-acre lots minimum, and you can see that the east and west property lines vary, so the lengths of the properties also vary. A little bit closer. So this is a little bit of an enlargement of the proposal. The distances of the driveway aprons is defined by FDOT at 660 feet minimum, which is what's shown on these plans. The stormwater design includes a large continuous dry retention area along the entire property, along the canal with extensions towards the roadway, designed to retain runoff from a 100-year, 3-day storm event. In the event that the stormwater runoff becomes too high and excess water will be discharged into the canal, which is the legal positive outfall for this project through an emergency outfall structure. Here's an elevation drawing showing a conceptual development utilizing the increased height to provide a view of the lake. Let me reiterate, this is not a proposed development. There are no homes proposed with this application. It's just showing you what could be done with the PUD using the increased height, allowing you to see Lake Okeechobee over the Rim Canal and over the dike. Development review staff have found the CBR Investors LLC application to comply with all applicable regulations and the comprehensive growth management plan as detailed in the staff report. This application was heard before the local planning agency on February 20th, 2025, and it was voted 3-2 in favor of accepting staff's recommendation of approval. Staff does recommend approval of this application, and we move that the board receive and file the agenda item and its attachments, including the staff report, as Exhibit 1. And we move that the board adopt the resolution approving the rezoning from RE2A Rural Estate District to Planned Unit Development, and approve the Chancey Bay Ranch PUD zoning agreement, including the master final site plan. And that concludes the presentation. Happy to
Questions
answer
for
any
staff?
questions.
I didn't get the LPA recommendation.
It was 3-2 in favor of staff's recommendation.
And the dissenters? What were their reasons? Do you recall?
Yes, one did not want there to be the upper level, which was shown on the conceptual plan, to be living space. They wanted it to be just a place you could sit outside, but not to be enclosed, such as in a bedroom, no living space. I don't recall Do you remember what the other dissenter was?
He was just basically against any code provisions that would allow a PUD out there. I don't recall anything in really specific. Oh, I do now. It was the shoreline protection zone. He felt like that there should be one on the Rim Canal and the lake, and there isn't one.
Right,
Thanks.
yes.
Staff, would you like to make a presentation, or rather, applicant, would you like to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Is that is not yours?
I think it's the far
Is
right.
it? Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, not that one.
Not that one either.
I can't tell.
Records training.
We should have that now briefly.
Um,
Yeah, the very top right.
I was told, this one, here we go.
Yeah, it was.
Is it already up? I guess it's
Oh.
already up.
Oops, come on.
Yeah, there.
Be a big file.
Yep. Okay, good afternoon, Commissioners. Matthew Barnes, Senior Project Manager for WGI, here on behalf of the applicant CBR Investors LLC. Brian did a great job, showing you where exactly this property is. So it is way out west on the Rim Canal and north and west of Indiantown. It is, as Brian said, over a mile long, 5,600 feet approximately. And it's very narrow. It varies in width or depth, I should say, from as little as 75 feet at the narrowest part to 224 feet at the widest part. So there'll be sort of long and skinny lots is what's proposed. Surrounding uses, also as Brian explained, are primarily agricultural and with some single-family residential to the north. So this is what you would see. This is what you see currently if you drive along Connors Highway and you look off to the west. It's small and narrow, and it's separated by the highway from the other property that the same property owner owns. So it's too small and narrow to be effectively used as agriculture. So it is already zoned with the RE2A zoning. So we're seeking to develop a compatible density subdivision. So what are we applying for? It's a master and final site plan for 9 single-family homes, all on 2-acre lots, as well as a PUD agreement that rezones the property from RE2A to PUD, and it formalizes the development agreement and the required public benefits. As staff noted in their presentation, though, that there are things that we are not doing, right? So we're not requesting a land use change, right? That's very important. The existing land use designation is rural density, which allows 1 unit per 2 acres, and that's what we're seeking. We're not seeking to increase the allowable density. Number 2, we're not also increasing the density through any other means, right? So we're not increasing the land use, or not changing the future land use, I should say. We're also not we're not decreasing the minimum lot size. So we're not taking 9 units and wanting to build them on half-acre lots at one end of the property. We're keeping them as intended to be 2-acre lots. The PUD is only necessary in order to achieve the views of Lake Okeechobee that we're trying to achieve. In other words, it's the height that we're asking to increase, which I'll go over later in more detail. But I do want to point out that the existing future land use category of rural density does allow heights up to 40 feet. So in essence, we're seeking to normalize, if you want to, the zoning with the land use in this case, in terms of the allowable height. Other zoning standards, as Brian pointed out in his presentation, we're actually meeting and exceeding, including side setbacks, minimum lot width, minimum lot frontage, the minimum open space we're exceeding from 50% to 75%. So with any PUD, you have to, the applicant needs to proffer public benefits, which of course is ultimately the purview of the Board of County Commissioners. So we are proffering to provide a signal preemption device for the Martin County Fire Rescue, which, as you probably all know, is a device that is put onto a signal that all the trucks then have the equipment. Then when they approach the signal, it automatically turns that signal from red to green if it happens to be red. which allows for obviously faster response times across the county. There's a second benefit to the public that is not a public benefit in the PUD agreement, but we think it is a benefit to the county and therefore the public, which is the design of the stormwater system. So it's over-designed. So let me explain that. It's the standard county stormwater design and the South Florida Water Management District design is to hold back your what's called the 25-year 3-day storm event, which is modeled. All the civil engineers, know how to design stormwater to hold back that amount of water. So the proposed storm dry detention areas on this project is designed to retain the 100-year 3-day storm event, which is the largest storm you can model, right? So 100% of all the rainwater, stormwater that falls on the property will be retained on site and will not be discharged into the public water system. Our legal positive outfall is the rim canal, which is where we would normally be discharging our water. But again, we're designed to hold it back for the 100-year 3-day storm event with zero discharge into the public water system. That actually does require about twice the size of the stormwater design, or dry detention areas, I should say. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So you saw the site plan in a black and white version on Brian's presentation. I'll get into a little more detail of it here. It's not anything fancy, right? It's the size of the property kind of lays itself out in terms of how the lots are designed. But again, it's 75% minimum open space. Each lot is 2 acres. We're not increasing density, and we're not decreasing the minimum lot size. So here's a close-up view of like the northernmost 3 lots, just to give you an example. Each house, this house, when you scale it off, is approximately a 3,000 square foot footprint, just to give you an idea of what you're looking at as a representation. As Brian stated, we're not proposing specific houses, specific footprints or architecture with this. That's handled at the building permit stage. That's not part of the PUD process. Each lot will have its own driveway connection to Connors Highway, and the darker green areas represent what the dry detention areas are, where there's going to be landscaping, which I'll get into a second, and then there's going to be additional landscaping that's not on our landscaping plan because it'll be up to each individual homeowner to plant trees in between the front of their home and the highway. So here's like the middle lots. As you can see, some of the lots, on the left side of the screen here, that's where the property gets the narrowest. So it's actually too narrow to be able to put a home over there. So you have to, some of these homes will have to be placed in certain parts of the lot. But for the most part, the homeowner will have the freedom to locate the house, obviously not within the setbacks. As Brian said, we have larger than required side setbacks in the front and rear setbacks. So the trees, I do want to point out that there's 158 trees on site now, right? And we are proposing to preserve about 70% of that, 109 trees. And therefore, which means we're proposing to remove 49 trees from the site. 60% of those trees that we're proposing to remove are due to poor health, insect damage, and of course, some of the trees out there unfortunately did suffer some severe damage from the hurricane in October, Hurricane Milton. But I'm pleased to report that just in the landscaping that's in the side and the rear yards, that we are proposing to add 466 new trees, which means the total tree count on the property at a minimum will be 575 trees. That's a net of 417 new trees on site when you factor in what we're removing due to poor health and other things. Again, that does not count the trees that the homeowners will be placing in their own front yards between their house and the highway. I do want to point out that in terms of a gopher tortoise burrow, when the environmental assessment was first done, this project actually was filed in 2023 with the county. So in June of 2023 and again in May of 2024, there was a gopher tortoise burrow found near the southern end of the property. In mid-February of this year, just not too long ago, the site was visited again, but the burrow was found to be collapsed, perhaps due to when the hurricane came through, but this isn't uncommon. This happens with Gopher tortoise burrows all the time. In fact, it was a very isolated burrow, so it's probably that he moved on to a different location. So the one zoning regulation that, of course, we are proposing to modify with the PUD is the allowable height. The RE2A zoning district limits the height to 30 feet, and we're seeking a height of 40 feet, which again is consistent with and the same height as allowed by the rural density future land use designation that is applicable to the property currently. So being able to get up to the 40-foot height is just enough height to be able to see over the height of the Herbert Hoover Dike. That is, of course, directly to the west of the property. And if you think back to the image I showed you when you're driving along the highway, that's the predominant thing you see, in the background of that picture is the height of the dike. If we were limited to 30 feet, you wouldn't have enough height to be able to see over the top of the dike and then down into the lake. So keep in mind that the surface water of the lake is approximately 20 feet lower than the top of the dike. It's not like the water is right below the dike. I mean, we hope it's not, right? So you have to be able to get up high enough to see then not only over the dike, but then sort of down into it in order to achieve water views, which is the intent of our request for the additional height. You just heard from staff. Obviously, they're recommending approval. They have reviewed the project and assert that it meets all of the guidelines and standards in the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations. And I do want to just wrap up my presentation by talking a little bit about the applicant, which is Chancey Bay Ranch LLC. They actually own the property directly to the east as well, which is over 1,000 acres of farmland and pasture land. The mission of Chancey Bay Ranch is as it says here on the screen. It's to integrate the supply chain from the producer to the consumer to raise, process, and produce the most tender and healthy local raised 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef in a manner that protects and enhances the environment. They are a small local operation with 100% of their cattle that's born and raised and harvested here in Florida, mostly in Martin County. It's a free-range operation on the east side of the highway with over 1,000 acres, as I mentioned. The livestock enjoy humane and clean conditions. It's grass-fed and grass-finished beef. No grains, corn, GMO, or artificial supplements or animal products, byproducts are in their diet. So real quick, the benefits of grass-fed and grass-finished beef is that, it's less overall fat, higher levels of heart-healthy omega-3 fatty acids, more heart disease fighting antioxidant vitamins. And environmentally, though, it's very important that it does decrease greenhouse gas emissions compared to what you might call traditional cattle farming. It increases the biodiversity of the pasture ecosystem, and it improves the quality of the runoff of the water. Finally, I'll just leave you with this, too, that they have owned the property for over 10 years. In total, it's a little over 1,500 acres, family-owned. They're not developers. They're just seeking to build these. Again, it's the small piece, on the west side of the highway that's not suitable for agriculture. They're just seeking to develop the by right density that's on the property. And they do plan to reserve one of these 9 lots for the use of their own families. So they will, they're not selling this, or they're not looking to develop this and flip it to a national home builder or anything like that. This is one of these lots will be for their own family. So with that, I conclude my presentation. I thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Barnes?
Not officially.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none, back to the board. Mr. Campy.
This used to be my district before the redistricting. When I first heard about this project a couple of weeks ago, I took a ride out there because I was thinking this is about as far out west as you can get. And I hadn't been out this way in a while. And the pictures tell the story. There's literally nothing out there. So I was originally wondering, why, why would you do 9 units out here? It's pretty. It's isolated. It's not for everybody, but you're not building 200 of them, you're building 9. And as I think our staff and the applicant made perfectly clear, 99.9% of this you're allowed to do on your own anyway. The only thing that you're really looking for some consideration from us was that 10-foot difference. But if you look at it, on some of your lot coverages, it was supposed to be no more than 50 feet, and you're making it, had to be 50, you're making the open space 75. And so I think that in my mind at least, I saw some balance there. And the logical question from me would be, why do you need the extra 10? I think it's obvious. To build a home out there to the eastern side of the Herbert Hoover Dike, looking directly, and if you could almost go back to that picture, looking directly at the side of the dike sort of defeats the whole concept of the sunsets and the location, the value of the location. The only reason to be that far out there, other than the isolation, would be the gorgeous western views. So I personally don't have an issue with that. I think you've met all the other criteria. The only reason you're going from straight to PUD is because, like I mentioned, about this height issue. So the concept of having this dramatic public benefit that a PUD would come hand in hand with on 9 homes, I don't think it's the same as when we're doing neighborhoods. And I thought it's one of those examples of an interesting point of view. People own this property. They have, I'm sure, explored, hey, can we put some of those gorgeous cows over on the other side of the road or whatever, or farm it? They've determined that they couldn't. I don't see my position up here to be punitive and to, knock people down from having ideas and aspirations on their own property. And because of that, barring public comment, which I think you asked for already, I would make a motion to accept the applicant's staff's recommendation and to approve the application.
Commissioner Heatherington.
Yep, I agree with most of what you said. I do have one question for the applicant I forgot to ask earlier. I'd like, while you're coming up, I'd like that you over-engineered it to the 100-year storm threshold. And DEP has asked that if sewer is not available to connect by 2030, that advanced treatment systems will be installed in lieu of septic tanks. So will you be installing those at construction of this?
Do you mind if I consult with my team real quick?
Nope, and I'll finish my comments while you're consulting. So I also agree that public benefit, we got a lot of emails about public benefits, and I agree they should be able to use their private property. And if this was in a location, say on Salerno or Monterey, then I feel like you could require them to do a sidewalk and bike paths and the things that maybe the public sees as more of a traditional public benefit. But quite frankly, with this location, I don't know what more you could require them legally to do as a public benefit. So with that, pending the answer to this question, I would second the motion.
I think what I'd say at this moment is, of course, we will comply with whatever regulation is in place at the time the building permits are sought. So I think that's.
I would consider that, because if you're building new structures and the department is requiring those by 2030, then it means 2025 now you'll be just under that window, and particularly since you're on the dike and the lake. I'm not super familiar with the advanced treatment systems, but there was a bill passed that those will be used and replaced with traditional septic tanks by 2030. So.
And I'm pretty sure we're not going to be bringing water and sewer out there anytime soon.
Nope.
No, that's for sure.
Guys, no plan on that, right? Water, sewer?
Commissioner Capps.
As it was mentioned previously, this is not a comp plan amendment. It's not a density increase. It doesn't violate our 4-story height limit. And I'm really impressed with the fact that this is a small project owned by local ag people. Apparently, they own the property right across the street. It doesn't obstruct the view of anyone because you have a working ranch across the street owned by the same people. They plan to live in one of the houses themselves. And so I will support it.
Ms. Elder?
Yes, Elise Elder, Deputy County Attorney. I have a couple things. I wanted to confirm that we turned in our notice, affidavit notice at the LPA for this. Yes. And then I just want to make the record clear that there's nothing in the PUD agreement that requires this family to continue to own these properties. They could sell it to a developer tomorrow, just so the record's clear on that. And then there's nothing about the septic in the agreement either. So that's all.
Any further comments? I, on the other hand, don't like exceptions. There are always unintended consequences. You know, this applicant may be very noble and treasure our comprehensive plan, but the next one may not be. And I'm fearful any time of raising height limits. I don't believe I ever have. And now is certainly not the place to start. So I won't be supporting the motion. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
That motion passes 3-2 with Commissioners Vargas and Hurd dissenting. Thank you. Now we're coming to our last item, Department 4, which is an initial assessment resolution for the Beau Rivage Water Main Municipal Service Benefit Unit. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Sam Amerson, Utilities and Solid Waste Department Director, and I have Leo Rapetti, he's our Technical Services Administrator. That's our Engineering Division for Utilities and Solid Waste, and Leo is going to present the item.
Good afternoon. Next slide, please.
No.
Us? It's Donna. It's us. Here we go. The Beau Rivage neighborhood, the attached aerial shows the benefited area shaded back in pink. The Beau Rivage neighborhood consists of western Beau Rivage plus a small piece at the bottom of Bay Colony. This property was, the Beau Rivage property was annexed into Martin County from St. Lucie County in 2013. Martin County Utilities received a petition to connect water to 259 residents. Once we received the ballots back in September of 2020, there were 217 for, 41 against. Approximately 85% of the residents agreed to be assessed for water within this community. At the time, the range of anticipated cost was between $6,500 and $7,500. Martin County Utilities applied for and received state revolving fund financing for this project back in July of 2023. This project and 3 other assessment projects. The funding for that money, the interest of that money was 1.52%. Construction plans were bid out back in December of 2024. Accurate Drilling was deemed the lowest responsible bidder. The water assessment project will provide a number of benefits to the neighborhood, including, in addition to safe, reliable, clean drinking water and fire protection. The costs here show that each benefited property would be assessed $9,989. They have the option of paying that up front at the beginning of the project, or they can pay over time on their tax bill as a annual assessment for over the period of 20 years for $638.87. The lump sum shown here is consistent with the prior board policy, I believe that was approved back in the fall, to keep our water assessments capped at the $10,000 mark. For residents connecting to water, they typically use about 6,000 gallons a day. They would see a total water bill of just under $35. Moving on to schedule, we're at the second bullet item, the initial resolution, today, February 25th. What's not shown on here is a public community workshop that we'll be hosting here in the chambers at March 18th. We're looking, if the project's approved, we move forward, looking to commence construction in May of this year and be complete approximately 10 months later. In this,
Mr. Repetti?
yes,
Just a logistical question. You said you're going to have the community meeting here in the chambers. Why not like at the library up in Jensen or something? Because this is all the way up that way, tucked in off of Britt Road, right? Just as a suggestion. I mean, you'd probably get more people to come, and the more people that come understand the project and make your lives easier.
Ken, we've not sent the letters out yet. The letters are scheduled to go out on March 5th, so point well taken, and we'll take care of that. So in this neighborhood, Public Works has been busy. They've spent about $1 million designing and doing improvements to the drainage within the community. Concurrent with the construction of the water main as part of this assessment, this neighborhood is targeted for Martin County Utilities' ongoing grinder-based septic to sewer program. So we have the opportunity to remove about 250 septic systems that are in relatively close proximity to the North Fork of the St. Lucie River. One of our missions is to try to get those properties converted in areas adjacent to the waterways. Once we're done with this project, then Public Works will come in and they will overlay all of the public roads that they maintain out there. And so the neighborhood will be new drainage, new roads, water and wastewater. Moving forward, we shouldn't have to be back in there for many, many years. This concludes our presentation, and staff recommends the board approve the initial assessment resolution to create the Beau Rivage Water Main Municipal Service Benefit Unit. And I'd be happy to take any questions at this point.
You guys are going to make that project so nice, St. Lucie County's going to try to get it back.
Commissioner Vargas?
Yes, I have a question. Who decided to cap this at $10,000? I know you said it was back in the fall before the new board was seated, but who came up with that?
That was developed several months back. We had another water main assessment project for the Evergreen and Windstone neighborhoods in Palm City, Western Palm City. And we had balloted them several years ago. And 4 to 5, 6 years ago, these water main assessments were coming in between $6,500 to $7,500 per ERC or per connection. And with inflation, everything going on, supply chain issues, pricing increased significantly for these materials. And so when we had a staff level workshop with those communities, it was decided or discussed would be able to do some utility contributions in order to cap that. We have a cap of $12,000 on the vacuum sewer systems, the assessments. And the thought came up, well, can we cap the water main assessments because the prices have gotten extremely high since some of these subdivisions were first balloted. And so that's how this came about. The board asked staff to review our policy on assessments, to include that language in the policy. We brought that department level policy back to the board, and the board approved that unanimously. And so we're following board policy as best we can.
And commissioners, if I can comment on that too. In our comp plan, our primary utilities job is to provide services within the urban service boundary. And so
How well is that working out for us?
Really well.
it's doing well. So so on one of the project that highlighted with the Evergreen one was that there was a lot of infrastructure needed to get to that project, and there was a canal and some other things. And so part of that policy was to look at what is the utility doing in regard to getting the infrastructure to the subdivision. And so we looked, so that was part of the important part of the policy, is that looking at getting the infrastructure to the subdivision, then the assessment would be based upon the servicing on the internal of the subdivision to so that we could have some consistency between one assessment to the other. And because we'd already had a policy regarding sewer projects with a cap at roughly, was it 12,000, that the water was recommended that we have a cap at 10,000, where on a number of projects where you already have existing infrastructure nearby, we could come under that cap without having to do anything. And those that other ones, we may need to seek grants or other means to be able to get the price down. So that was the impetus for the actual program to encourage the infill development to have water and sewer.
Commissioner Campy?
Yes, thank you. I think that's a very legitimate question, especially considering that you weren't here for the process. The story goes back further than that. That particular neighborhood had taken a vote and had agreed to do water, and our staff had created an option, since there's a canal there, of trying to come across. It was a much closer trip, if you will, for the piping to come under the canal or the waterway that's there into the neighborhood, but it required a lot of back and forth approvals from the DEP,
South Florida Water.
South Florida and the Corps of Engineers, for them to eventually say no. But that took a couple of years, and then by that point, the price had gone from, as what Mr. Amerson said, as a reasonable price to much more expensive. So the residents were saying, wait a second, a couple of years ago, we had agreed to these prices. Yes, you had an engineering strategy that would have been terrific, but it didn't work, so now we're being punished to the tune of thousands of additional dollars, as well as what you heard, that everything is more expensive. And what we've found is that if you create a price that is so high, then you defeat your ultimate goal, because the residents will always deny it. They won't do it. And to Mr. Donaldson's point, Evergreen happens to be one of those neighborhoods that sort of stretches out far off of Murphy, towards the back with larger lots. But it's an older neighborhood, so you'd think, wow, this is a very fancy, rich neighborhood. Well, not necessarily if people bought those houses 40 years ago, and you'd think, well, they can easily afford to pay whatever. They can't. They're older residents that live in there, but the problem is that the original calculations had assumed that we would bring, that the neighborhood would pay to get the pipe all the way in there, when really it's the county's responsible to get the pipe to the front gate, and then the residents pay. And what you'll find in the future, even in most of your district is pretty well established, but what you'll find is that's not the only price that those residents will pay. That brings the water line to the street in front of their home. They're still going to be responsible for the connections and the plumbing and the rest of it, which is most of the time, especially on those larger lots, additional thousands and thousands of dollars. So it's not out the door at 10, but we just needed to create some kind of a ceiling, because these gentlemen are going through all this effort to have the projects denied because they thought it was going to be 8,000, but instead it was 15,000. And so now there's some consistency. If you get both, it's $22,000 before you do any work. Thank you.
Commissioner Vargas?
Yes, what is, Mr. Emerson, what is the actual cost for this? I've heard everything that's been said, but what's the actual cost
The total construction cost
per home?
per home, without any contributions from the utilities or any grants, the cost is approximately $13,580 per ERC, per connection.
Just to the street, not to the house.
That's fine,
No.
but that's the cost, and that's where I'm
That's the
trying
infrastructure
to
cost.
say here. So who makes up the difference for that? If it's
In our
19.
calculation sheet, we have a line item for contributions, whether it be grant, state funding, other sources, utility funds. In this case, the utility is contributing approximately $930,000 for this effort.
So that's moving it from another fund that you could have used that money for.
It's from utility funds, CFC funds, utility contributions, utility fees.
Commissioner Vargas, this was also, until pretty recently, an oddball enclave of St. Lucie counties, and we were persuaded to annex them by
Years ago, I can't believe it.
by one of our state representatives. I'm just curious, on the first aerial, there is a great big swath of green space to the east of the assessment area. Is that privately owned? All that? Is that publicly or privately owned? All that?
Privately owned.
Oh, that's the golf course, isn't it?
No,
No?
there's actually a slough that passes through from the north. You can see the water body.
Yeah, I see it.
East of where it says Beau Rivage. There's a slough that runs all the way down. There's a bridge that we're actually crossing on Britt Road that ultimately goes to the waterway just east of the pink area at the south tip there. So those grades in there are extremely low. They're in elevation 2, 3, 4. The reason that there is a pink large rectangle that's all owned by one person, they have graciously given us an easement across their property. The neighborhood to the north has a water main and adequate easements to be able to get to there. So instead of us having a dead-end water main coming down Britt Road, we're able to loop that back to provide redundancy and better water quality through the north neighborhood by allowing him to connect. And, at the future, if he wanted to build something on that lot, then obviously we'd have to meet all the other Martin County land development regulations and permitting requirements.
Is the same thing true of the vacant land on the south? That's half the size?
That's a residential property that fronts Britt Road, so it benefits from our existing project.
Okay.
If you zoom way in below the tennis courts, you can see a small white box.
Yeah.
That's an existing home, and that's all of his property that wraps around there.
I've been there, as a matter of fact, yep.
Okay.
Is that
Denny Hudson.
No, it's,
Yes, back there.
I'll think of it in a bit. Okay. Okay, great. Commissioner Capps.
Can you talk a little bit about the goals of our septic to sewer plan, for a good review for us new folks on the commission here?
Sure, absolutely. I came on board in April of 2018, and the county staff prior to that had been trying to develop a septic to sewer conversion program or septic tank elimination program. In 2015, a report was provided. We call it the CapTech report. It identified some priority areas, 24 priority areas that the county should evaluate for sewer systems to eliminate septic tanks. In November or December of 19, the board, staff brought a policy to the board, a septic sewer to sewer conversion policy to the board, which they adopted. And it was the board's really an environmental initiative to improve water quality in the rivers, reduce nitrogen and phosphorus loadings on the river and surface waters. And so we brought that forward. That was approved. And the goal basically was to provide sewer service to 10,000 homes in 10 years, and which is a pretty big challenge.
Well, it was originally 20 years, and
Yes.
put up, we said,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
number one and the number 2.
I knew that was, yes, that's a true story. We always say it starts in parks and it ends in utilities, so. But that was basic initiative, and so we've been working on that. The commissioners understood early on that if we were going to be successful in getting grants, the only way we could make this happen, make it somewhat cost feasible, was through grant funding and other sources. The county recognized that. We needed some skin in the game when we apply for grants, local matches, and the board, which I've never seen in my career, since it was the board's initiative, they contributed state revenue sharing and some FP&L franchise fees to assist in that process. And that was because a lot of this work, when it's complete, the roads need to be milled and resurfaced. So once the construction's complete, we've got basically new roads for the residents. And so that was the only way we could actually make this happen. And they realized that early on, and it's been a huge benefit for the program.
And so how far along are we for 10,000 houses in 10 years?
So far, between our vacuum sewer program and our grinder-based program, we are approaching 5,000 units available for connection in the past about 6 years. So we're well on target. This neighborhood would be neighborhood number 18 that we're able to get septic to sewer conversions done with our grinder-based septic to sewer program.
Great. And then I had one other question. The caps that we have for 10,000 on water and 12,000 on sewer?
No relation.
Not necessarily.
No, I meant to your last name, sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay. Are those reasonable for the future? You know, I mean, like you described a period of time where inflation drove the water number from 7,000 to 10,000. It wasn't that long of a period of time. Like how long can we rely on those two numbers?
That's a very good question. Going forward, we may not be able to rely on that in the next several years, but we will know, we'll have a couple more projects out to bid in the near future, and we're going to reevaluate it at that time. It may be that we have to modify that policy going forward if we see that inflation is not coming down significantly and material pricing is not coming down, labor is not coming down. But if we see a downward trend in those costs, we definitely should be able to keep it on those caps we currently have. But it's going to be, I think, a wait and see on the next several projects that we receive bids.
Well, that's oh, go ahead.
Add into that, if you, I think you can sustain that number for a number of years if the state continues to invest 100 to 300 million a year into septic to sewer and surface water improvement projects. If we're able to do that, I think you will be able to get grants that can match 50/50 or they're close to that, or maybe a little bit more, and on average, we should be able to meet the goal. But it will be dependent upon the state of Florida continuing to invest in our water program.
Great. And then just looking at this map here, when you see the close proximity to the North Fork of the St. Lucie River, I think the river's going to be breathing a sigh of relief. So good job with this.
Thank you.
And just a quick comment, and thank you for recognizing that. And even though you see they're all not waterfront, riverfront, the drainage system in here eventually discharges to the river, which most subdivisions do. That was some treatment retention. They all discharge to the river. So good point.
Commissioner Vargas?
Yes, this may be a question for Mr. Donaldson. How often or when can we revisit this initiative that has the cap, sort of piggybacking onto what Commissioner Capps had referred to? I don't see pricing going down or any of the other enumerated items that Mr. Emerson referred to.
So normally, we would bring this up when we were struggling with meeting the goal. For instance, the challenge would really surface when you have a project that, in order to fulfill the special assessment, and we've maxed the local and state contributions, and you have a project that is a go, no-go at, let's say, 13,000 or 14 or whatever it is, that's normally when we'd bring it to you and ask you, this doesn't meet your policy, but this is the best we can do. Do you want to continue this, or do we want to amend it? Other than that, it would be simply any time the board asked us to revisit the program.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Do you have a motion on that one?
Not yet.
I will move staff's recommendation for approval.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
We look forward to seeing you soon. That brings us to the close of our meeting. We'll hear commissioner comments. Commissioner Vargas?
Nothing yet.
Commissioner Capps?
I'm good.
I am too. Commissioner Campy?
I have had, and I'm sure it's happening everywhere, but in the last 2 weeks, there's been some very serious car accidents in Palm City, specifically along the Martin Downs Boulevard area. One was a fatality across the street from the Cummings Library, which has had a share of accidents there. The neighborhood is Pine Ridge on the south side there. It's just like where Matheson ends. And I've been hearing this for quite a long time. I know that when, and Mr. Donaldson will get panicky when I say this next point, but the permissive flashing yellow arrow. Imagine, if you will, you came over the Palm City Bridge, you're driving on Martin Downs Boulevard, you live in Pine Ridge, you're in the left turn lane, you get the blink, it's a older neighborhood. I don't know if it's specifically 55 and older, but basically it's an older residential neighbor. And I don't mean older like the houses are old, the people that live in it are older. So now there's cars that are looking to make the left heading to go north on Matheson, and the traffic coming on Martin Downs Boulevard is racing towards you. So you're older, you've been driving for a long time, the car's behind you, putting a little pressure on you, so you go. And you cannot see because there's cars basically doing the opposite left turn in front of you, so you can't really see. So you sort of go for it. And we've created a situation where people are losing their lives or being catastrophically injured. I don't have the statistics, but I would tell you from anecdotally, there's been several accidents there in the last couple of years. The residents reach out to me and they say, you have to do something. I completely agree with them. I know that that road is a state road, it's an FDOT road, and I get the value. I personally don't get the value of flashing permissive yellow arrows. I get that it's a traffic engineering technique, and I'm not debating that, but I think what we need to have as commissioners and staff is the ability that if we see consistently a situation that we should be allowed or eligible to eliminate it there at that specific intersection. Not necessarily everywhere, but I can't with a straight face go, and I speak to those people all the time, with a straight face and say, we're not going to do anything about it. You know, their neighbor and their friend is dead. The accident was absolutely horrific. It was like you could barely understand which were the cars. We have to address that. It has to. If we do it as a pilot program, I'm really insisting that we eliminate that left turning, blinking arrow at Martin Downs Boulevard as it enters into Pine Ridge. I can at least go back to that neighborhood if I have to and show them this video, but I really mean it that we need to address that. I don't want to hear or get an email or a phone call from somebody else that says another person has been seriously injured there. They cannot comprehend the driving technique involved for making that turn into blind traffic. Plenty of people can. I'm concerned about the people that can't. Thank you.
I agree with you. I think that they're in some low-volume intersections, they work fine. But the same thing is true of Indian Street and Dixie Highway, and it's an unsafe situation. It's awful. No one should be turning on a yellow arrow at that intersection. You just can't see. And there are others along Dixie that work just fine, but that one is an example of one where it shouldn't be allowed.
The one at Martin Highway and Map, where I make the left to go to my home, the advantage is in both directions, north and south, if you're making the left, there's the turning lanes to make the left, and then there's like a striped out, like 10-foot extra. And then there's the two straight lanes. So that extra little width of that extra lane allows you to see if any cars are coming. The one that I'm mentioning by Pine Ridge, it's blind. There's no possible way to look past the cars to see if anybody's coming. Plus, the straightaway from the light previous is so far down, these cars are picking up they're not driving. Even if they were driving 45, which is, I think, what that is there. They're doing 55 or 60. You're basically just trying to play Russian roulette. Did you get my point?
Not a time for humor, but yes, I do. We have a new traffic engineer, Eric Ferguson. He actually had been with us in the past. We were lucky to get him back, and so I will have him take a look at those intersections that were mentioned today and make recommendations to DOT.
By the way, speaking of Eric Ferguson, you should talk to him. He made a presentation to the MPO yesterday about improving intersections on Dixie and Hope Sound, just in Hope Sound, at about 5 intersections, right? And it was really a good presentation. He's bringing some really good suggestions to you.
He had been with us for a while.
Yeah.
Then he went down to Palm Beach. Then he went up to Indian River. He's got a really remarkable resume for handling these kind of issues. So yeah, I mean, I love Luke Lambert, but I'm okay with our
And where
replacement.
does he live?
And he lives in Palm City, of course. That's him right there.
Yes, it is.
Oh, geez.
He,
Don't walk in, go.
no, come on in. The commissioners are calling. He's just casually walking by. We're talking about you. No, yes, can you introduce yourself to our new colleagues and explain your resume? I had heard about it.
Eric Ferguson, Traffic Engineering Administrator. I was previously the County Traffic Engineer in Indian River County, and I've been a Palm City resident. I think when did I worked here before from 2008 to 2014. I was a project engineer in traffic, and I also split time on the CRA. So I'm glad to be back again.
What'd you do in Palm Beach County?
Oh, I came from Indian River County most recently.
Yeah.
But Palm Beach County, I was a roadway project engineer. I jumped around a little bit. I went to the city of West Palm Beach,
Yeah, what was your big project?
Clematis Street.
Yeah.
And that won a lot of awards.
You did Clematis.
Yep.
Well, you can say that here in the county. Don't say that in there.
So I was just saying that you made a really, really good presentation to the MPO yesterday, and unfortunately, Commissioner Capps wasn't there, but I asked him to meet with you so that you
Okay.
could give him the presentation, because it's going to please him.
Yeah.
Great. I look forward to it.
Yeah, we identified, the project focuses on 5 crossings in Hobe Sound, so.
Awesome.
And we're even potentially a traffic signal at Gleason. With
Right.
the limited, as you're well aware, we have very little space between Dixie and the tracks for trucks, so there's a lot of, the other signals need upgrades to meet current standards, so.
Super.
It's a lot of what sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. As I mentioned yesterday when you weren't there, Indian River County had a best practice grant with Brightline that I was kind of lucky. My predecessor there was a national expert on railroads and traffic signals. And we did a lot of innovative things that's the only place in FEC, and I'm glad that hopefully if we get this grant, we'll be able to do the same thing in Martin County. So I'd be happy to explain it to you more.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Welcome back.
While I have you here, I would say that taking my shot. I'm not gonna waste my shot. As a Palm City resident, Martin Downs Boulevard, when you make the left into Pine Ridge, they have a permissive yellow flashing arrow. There was a fatality there 2 weeks ago at that specific intersection, and our colleagues have a couple others.
Matheson?
Matheson, you'd make the right onto Matheson. It's
Yeah.
where it dead ends right into Pine Ridge. The neighborhood's demographic is older, so people pull out in front and get killed. And so I need you to work with FDOT. That cannot be, it needs to be a straight red-green arrow, left arrow there, because I can't continue to make excuses for the catastrophic accidents that are happening there.
Right, we did receive some requests from residents in Pine Ridge on that. We forwarded it to FDOT.
I'll need more than that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Welcome back. See you in the neighborhood.
Commissioner Heatherington,
I'm all set.
Mr. Donaldson,
We're good.
Ms. Woods, anybody else? We are adjourned.